Hi, Kari. Thank you so much for your grade 4 submission. You've done an excellent job again. And I guess I wanted to start with a thank you because personally, this is really a wonderful gift to me to see that you've paid so much time and devoted so much time to really going through the curriculum. And one of the things that's a challenge for me as a teacher in this format, in this medium, is knowing the effectiveness of the materials we put together. And I get the impression, and from my time with you on the performance calls and coaching calls, and also how you approach this, that you really, often take me at my word for what I teach, and you watch everything and you go along with it. So I want to thank you for that, because it's not the case with everybody, because people often do a lot of other things. So it really is a gratifying thing for a teacher to have put a lot of thought into the program, and to see it being followed so directly and yielding results is really a great gift to me. So thank you for that. You've done an excellent job here, and you really have shown a lot of growth, and your technique and musicality are very, very well established. And I think that, I don't like the term talent because it is a little bit of a cop-out, but I think you have the skills that you possess are really those of the diligence and thoughtfulness and perseverance. And in my opinion, that takes people further than anything else. So, when you started mentioning about you feel the pulls of other things, I totally hear that, especially as you have a young family, and I wouldn't even really know the pulls of that, but I can imagine a little bit. But I would encourage you to keep going, to stay the course as fits your lifestyle, because you really are making excellent progress, and you're very well established. I think you have a strong musical sense. Your technique is very strong, and you're starting to verge into the world of speed, and you show really excellent speed in the single line scales, the modes and scales on one string. And even the speed burst you added at the end with the arpeggios was very good as well. So I would, to set a medium/long-term goal, perhaps looking to basically to get towards grade 8. I think you can do that probably within 2 to 3 years. And I think once you reach that point, you'll be able to teach your children music very confidently. You'll be able to take on many different pieces of repertoire and engage with other musicians with a certain sense of freedom. And I think you can get there with gusto. So that would be my encouragement to you, to sort of stay that course for a while longer. We all encounter dips in the progression of learning. And if you sort of feel that pull of, I get a little bored of this and I want to study that style of music, or you want to do other things with your life, I can just see that we all go through them, and we just need a little bit of nudging and direction along the way. So that's my hope, is that pushes you a little bit, at least for the medium term, to stay on the path, because you're doing a great job. So let's start actually with your analysis. I was really impressed, and for anyone else watching, this is not required. It's just that Kari has taken upon herself to really delve into the analysis of pieces, and we've spent some time on the coaching calls talking about it. And analysis, I think you've really done a good job of useful analysis, and part of that is essentially mapping out. Can I zoom in on this? Yeah, mapping out what you want to do. You've gone through you've gone through for repeats. Is that the repeat over here? Yes, right. You've given a separate sort of interpretation with articulations for the repeats as well, like that lovely chord you put in there on the minuet. So I think that's fantastic. And identifying scale fragments, I particularly like the descending musical lines you've identified in the Largo, and you also did it, I think, in the second half of this. I've got a few little points here and there. Let me see, is this going to work? Here we go. Just for musical shorthand, because you sort of, in one of the other pieces, what was it? You had LAS, and it was a sort of an acronym for something. And I think a lot of this could be visually demonstrated by making these little phrase marks. And so little phrase marks like that in music signify that they're connected. And you're saying it's a scale fragment. You often sort of say as well, it's a leading, like here, leading, right? So, and it depends. You could, you actually have put one of those marks in from the A. Oh, no, that's right. That looks like the circle. But just these little markings, they're little phrase markings, and you'll see those in music as well. So it might bring a bit more understanding to when you see those in music. But it really means we're grouping it together. So 2 and 3 and 1. It's really saying these notes belong towards that first beat. Same here. Understanding and it's a visual cue that says these notes belong together and are grouped together, and therefore, it could be, if you look closer, yes, you could identify a scale, or you could identify that they're leading towards a particular beat. Or for instance, this, I would disagree about the idea of that's a voice 3. I think this is just basically, oh, excuse me. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, that could be a voice 3. Or you could still consider it. Yeah, I can see both of those. So you could have the D, E, D, C, B. Yep. And then these are just little interjections. Yep, that works. And then this is just a little neighbor note. So again, you could have again, sort of just indicating if you wanted to. Of course, analysis is all really about making a practical sense, or making the score communicate the ideas that much more effectively. A couple of little things since you started identifying tetrachords, which is great. You could argue there might be one here. We've got G, F sharp, E, and then we've got these notes here which circle around the D. So G, F sharp, E, and then D is that final note of that tetrachord. So Bach does this a lot, where almost like he delays gratification of notes that come in a line or a sequence to a bit later, and sometimes a lot later. That can be kind of fun to figure out where they are. And you could argue also here, that's a tetrachord, C, B, A, G, and I guess you've got the G there as well. But your chordal analysis, the ones you put in, were spot on. They were very good. And then perfect cadence, yes, and the key centers back to G major. Binary form, absolutely. Yeah, really, really nice. Scooting on to the E minor, this was also spot on. The suspensions here, yes. Preparation, suspension, resolution, yes. Passing tone, B7, yes. F sharp minor, first inversion, yes. It's all correct. And then the question and answer phrase, yes. Pivot chord, yes. Well, yeah. I think we mentioned this a little bit. So E minor to A minor would be 4. Yeah, so these little moments here, yeah, this is getting into the weeds, a little bit of analysis, but this section here where we go to G major briefly, it's only for 2 measures. It's sort of, we have to wonder in analysis about, is this worth actually changing keys, saying it changes keys, because does it really change keys? The thing about analysis is we want it to be, like I said, practical, as opposed to kind of correct, if that makes sense. So G major is in the key of E minor, so is A minor. So the only odd chord out is that D7, and we know that that relates as a 5/7 chord to this next chord. So really, you could potentially just put this could be 3 in E minor, and this could be in brackets 5/7 of that 3. So it's just a way of, and this happens very often, 5/7 of something, 5 of 5, or in this case 5 of 3, and it just makes the harmony that much more interesting. But just because it's only 2 measures and it's very brief, we don't really go outside of the key that much. You could argue this is called a tonicization as opposed to a modulation. A modulation is where we really go to a whole other key, and it's like now we're in G major. You could argue, no, that's a bad example. But yeah, so this is tonicization. It's very brief, and then we're back in E minor. Yes, and then we've got again this. All that correct, done. So that's just that one little point. So you can take that moving forward, the 5 of something, and you put the 5 in brackets. Okay, and then the last one, the Largo, which we looked at together. It's not letting me do anything. Where's the last one? There it is. We sort of had a look at this together. I love that you identify the tetrachord. Fantastic. I love that you saw that these lines, the musical lines B, A, G, and then C, C, B, A, G, this tetrachord. Fantastic. Then this descending line, and as I was talking about in the lesson that was released recently, this sort of counterpoint line here. And these really allow you to identify things to bring out in the music. And then, like I also talked about, these little connecting tones that remind us almost that F sharp's been going all the way to there. And you start to think, once you see these connections in the music, man, that notated music like this is quite deficient in many ways. We want to somehow better explain that F sharp actually lives on in that piece. But maybe more specific to standard notation is classical guitar notation. It's a little less than satisfactory for what we would love to communicate. So the things you're seeing in the music are hidden, and it's wonderful that you're identifying them. And it's almost like this should be the score we get in the first place, if you know what I mean. So little ascending scale. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at, you can just start to make other connections in music, and that's what's so beautiful about these. The E at the top of the ascending scale, D, there's a C, here's a C at the bottom of the arpeggio, and then C. You can also get a little bit, go too far with this as well. You can start seeing things, but it is interesting to notice, in this incredibly beautiful music, that there's these lines E, D, C, 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 B, A, G. Anyway, you've done an excellent job here, and your instincts are spot on, and your skills at analysis are really quite good. So, okay, let's get into the music now. So, seeing as we talked about that, I really liked, the main thing that struck me about your playing is that the thought that you put in is very clear, and you execute it very well. As in, I can hear your analysis, if that makes sense. There's only two, there's 3 comments I had for the whole thing. And the first one, so about the ornaments and the added things. First of all, I love it. And it makes it unique, makes it engaging to listen to. The repeat is different. Some of the ornaments, that was great. I like that one a lot. There's a couple of them that don't sound stylistic to my ear. It's in the second section. Good separation of voices. That one, boyam bum 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 bum. It's just it's a little kind of folk guitar-y blues, like it's other styles. It doesn't strike me as that, you know. So what I would suggest is that you could go, if you wanted to go full-on nerd in the best possible way, you could go to the Quant's treatise on ornamentation, the Baroque period. You know, you can go to these books which talk about the way that people ornamented. It's very much like a language. You know, that after a while you immerse yourself so much in these sounds that it becomes, or maybe even colloquialisms. Like if you live in the South in the United States, you learn certain ways of saying things which sound like you're from the South, right? As opposed to perhaps somewhere in, I don't know, the Midwest. So it's that kind of knowledge. And I think probably the better way to get to know this is, I would suggest, if you're interested, listen to a lot of performances of, you know, in this case, yeah, you could listen to this minuet. So people like, I don't know if he's got recordings, Paul Odette, Nigel North, Jose Miguel Moreno, he does sort of Baroque guitars, and then piano renditions of it as well. People who might be noted for their Bach music. So Angela Hewitt is a very famous Bach player on piano. You might get Ralph Kirkpatrick on the harpsichord, and especially for Scarlatti's music and stuff. So listening to these recordings of great players play this music, I think actually will be even more effective by just being in that sound world and hearing the ornaments that they use. And what I would suggest is, one, just listening and just absorbing it. And you can kind of learn by osmosis from those things. And two, steal their ornaments. Especially if they're guitarists and you admire the ornament, lutenist, harpsichord, piano, steal and just try the ornaments. That's what I did with my Scarlatti A major K208. They say steal like an artist. You just pick things you like and you put them onto your rendition. It's probably going to end up sounding different anyway. And I think it's one of the best ways to go about doing it. So that would be my suggestion for any kind of stylistic additions that you might make. Still come up with your own ideas, but let those great performers and artists inform your sound world, your stylistic world. But an excellent rendition. I really enjoyed it. The E minor. You're starting to, I can see you moving for the vibrato. That's something I thought when I was listening to your playing, is I'd love to hear moving forward more vibrato. I can't remember what unit that comes in. It might not be even till grade 6, but it's something that I look forward to hearing in your playing. Don't worry about, you wrote shanked notes, which I kind of laughed at. I just laughed at the word, it's a funny word. Don't, try and let them go as soon as possible in terms of, and don't even give them lip service, like in writing up your, self-assessment. I think you don't seem to suffer too much compared to the whole gamut of people with performance anxiety, but what affirmations do make a difference, and also stopping yourself from being negative also does make a difference. So I just let them go, and I wouldn't worry about them. I don't think I've ever seen that done that way. So, and it sounded great. Very cool. And then this was your child almost got a cameo again, I saw. One thing I was going to do, and you can do this as well, like there's plenty of room for all these arrangements in the world. I was actually thinking about arranging this for cello and guitar and just taking the top line, because I've heard a couple of renditions of the whole piece arranged, and it's hard. And this excerpt sounds great because it fits, but the rest of it starts to sound hard. You don't want it to sound hard. You want it to sound light and airy and beautiful and easy. So I wonder if perhaps you could look into an arrangement of basically just a bass line and a treble line, and you play the treble line. Could be interesting. Food for thought. Just really great. I want to bring attention to my favorite little moment in this. The F sharp, G. That was played so well because you really controlled the open G. It just, tiny little moments like that may start making the difference between these interpretations. I really love that little moment. So look, excellent job, Kari. I fully enjoyed listening, just for enjoyment's sake, to your pieces, and I don't have much to say in terms of sort of corrections or anything. I think you've done an excellent job. Just for sake of time, there were kind of the one technical thing I did pick up on a couple of times is just your fourth finger in your left hand, and it came up mainly in the scales, and the other one was slurs. So when you had your scales, that fourth finger tends to, I would like to see the fourth finger join the hand a bit more. So basically when you're using that third finger, you can see it kind of tucks in. And so I'd love to see the fourth finger, 3, 2, maybe we can demonstrate a bit. Just not back here. I think that's a little something that will hold you back a little bit. So I would just work in your technical, especially in your scales, at getting that fourth finger to live in the same kind of area as your third finger, as opposed to being tucked back in the hand. And then with your slurs, all right, that's all the way back here. So I've come across this a lot. I wonder if I need to explain it better on the side. But the slurs are good. Very clean, crisp slurs, and the faster variations are good too. But you do have a tendency to take the tension. So there's a moment, especially on the slower ones, where there's a pitch bend, a slight pitch bend before each note. I'm exaggerating here. That kind of sound. And you do it just a little bit on each note. And so what I'd ask you to do in terms of your slur technique is basically to make it faster, and you want to only move right at the moment of the slur. You don't want to have any kind of lead up to it in terms of motion in the finger. So there's your first note, and nothing happens before you play the second note. It's quick. It's more of a snap, and you don't really have time for that kind of tension, building the tension. So it's kind of like a bow and arrow. You're kind of pulling it back and then letting it go. It needs to be much quicker than that. So try not to, and you can work a little bit on counter pressure, pushing the other direction with the other finger. Maybe it helps with the snap. Otherwise, you're going to start getting some distorted notes, which you don't want. So those are my two technical things. I went through all of it, and it all sounds pretty great. I really liked how you went for it on the fortes in the crescendi. I liked the speed burst at the end. I thought your modes and scales, when you played them fast, were really very, very impressive. And your staccatos were very good as well. So everything was pretty spot on. Just those two things, the pinky in the left hand, and having a look at your slurs And if I'm to be super picky with the slows, also try and keep your third and fourth finger a little more over the fingerboard. It's kind of the same issue as the other one. So once again, thank you so much for all your hard work. It's really paid off. I think you're doing an excellent job. I think you're going to continue to do an excellent job, and I hope you do persevere. Very much looking forward to seeing you at the summer school, and congratulations. Thanks, Kari. Bye.